with the work that the important work that Lambda Legal does nationally and locally in the Houston community. But for those of you who don't know about Lambda Legal, I want to take just a moment and describe for you a little bit about what Lambda Legal does. Now, Lambda Legal on the national level obviously is involved in very high-profile cases. They were intimately involved in one of the several cases that were combined and decided in the Obergefell decision by the Supreme Court last year, which granted, finally, equal marriage rights to LGBT persons. But, you know, there's a lot more than that. People kind of had this opinion or this idea that once marriage equality was achieved, maybe there wasn't so much to be done. But the fact of the matter is that the LGBT community and the HIV community face struggles, legal struggles every day in employment. Now that we have the right to marry, we face issues about how our families are going to be governed, parental rights, things like that. And Lambda Legal is on the front lines, handling cases on the local basis and on the national basis where necessary to protect and ensure that the LGBT and HIV community's legal rights are preserved and forcefully enforced where necessary. And so we, as a leadership committee here in Houston, are very proud to be involved in the work that Lambda Legal is doing, and we are so happy that all of you have come out tonight to support Lambda Legal. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to my co-chair, Bo Miller, who has a few more announcements.
Lawyers are not really good necessarily at advertising some of the things that they do. Lambda Legal is an organization that's made up of lawyers doing important legal work. So what our job was, Alan and mine, and the leadership committee, is to fashion a new money-making event and raise awareness for what we do. So our second year in a row, we're doing a thing called Equality Night Out. It's June 2nd. We would like you to consider supporting the event, talking to your employers, your law firms, your businesses, and getting the word out. June 2nd, we will email you, I'm sure, and let you all know what's happening. Mark it on your calendars. I think it's a Thursday evening. We'd really love to see everyone there. It'll be at the Magnolia Hotel. I'm impressed to see so many non-lawyers here. This is a big kick from me, is that Lambda Legal's not just for lawyers, it's for non-lawyers too. And that's one of the important things we do. Alan didn't talk about necessarily the future of what Lambda Legal's doing, but we hear about these bills in North Carolina, we hear about these bills in Georgia, we hear about them in South Carolina, Mississippi, and it will be Texas next year. I guarantee you it will be Texas. And what Lambda Legal does, it will file a lawsuit, and it'll work through the courts, and it will get success. And we will be successful, but that's the work that Lambda Legal does. We aren't necessarily as good about marketing that, and that's what we're changing today, and so what we'll change on June 2nd and in the future. With regard to that, we all have organizations we give to. Some of you may not, as many as others, but I would like you to think about giving to Lambda Legal tonight. We have forms over there. Roger will take your money at any time. He's very good at that. But what we do and what others do, it doesn't come cheap, it doesn't come easy, and there is a cost to that. And we would appreciate if you would think about, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, maybe in the future, of donating to our organization, to Lambda Legal, in order for it to continue doing the work that it does. Lambda Legal was there when Mitchell Katine needed an organization to come in and try Lawrence v. Texas. Lawrence v. Texas is what gave us gays to be free, really. Gays to do what gays do. Everyone else does it too. Just focus on the gays. They're also there with the Windsor decision. They're there every decision. Unlike other organizations, we actually do the work in the courts. So please consider giving. Any amount helps. They have me on a draft of every month, and I forget about it, and it just kind of happens. We are very, very honored and privileged to have Roger Poindexter here. He is from our Dallas regional office, and we have had so much great support from Roger. Thank you so much for coming, and you want to say a couple words.
I'm not going to climb up there. I'd just like to add my words of welcome. I am the South Central Regional Director for Lambda Legal, so I actually cover 8 states. And I have the great fortune of working with Bo and Alan and the rest of the Houston Leadership Committee. A year ago, the committee didn't exist. A little over a year ago, the committee didn't exist, and they've done a great job in bringing people together. One of the things that Bo had mentioned was the fact that Lawrence versus Texas was a case that was Lambda Legal. And if you didn't realize it, that's the case that really set precedents and changed our lives forever. In 2003, when that case was awarded, if you look at the history of how things happened right after that case was awarded, that's when things changed for the LGBT community. So Lambda Legal's been out there fighting for you all along, and our clients do not pay for our services. We are funded by our donors, so we would ask you to consider, reaching into your pockets and joining us at the Liberty Circle level or another level. And you could also sponsor our event in June. And if you want to hear more about the different sponsorship levels, stop by the table over there and I'll be happy to talk to you and give you additional information about that. The big thing about Lambda Legal being a national organization is the simple fact that the work that we do affects everybody. We do impact litigation. So we don't just take a case that's going to affect just the one person, it's going to affect the entire LGBT community. So from that perspective, as giving to the organization here, you're helping everybody all over the country and you're changing laws for the LGBT community.
It's one of the most amazing things to me. I'm 51 years old. So when I was going through high school, there wasn't anything worse that you could be than gay or lesbian. It was just the most awful thing. I was born and raised in Pasadena, Texas. And from that kid who was in high school who didn't think marriage was a possibility to today, when I can marry my partner, when I can adopt a child, when I can do all of these things, I never saw this coming in my lifetime. And so the rapidity with which that change has occurred is what gives me excitement about what's coming for the future, because we see society as a whole developing so quickly. My nieces, to them, two people who are in love or two people who are in love, and it just doesn't matter. And so what I see coming forward is I see the last gasps of hatred and fear and discrimination that was what we're seeing in these religious freedom acts and everything else. That's what that is to me. It's a scream of the people that realize that they've lost the battle. And I'm looking forward to the idea of having a society where we aren't seen as second-class citizens, and our rights are truly equal, not more than, but just equal to those of everyone else.
So how do you see mobilizing the community that if you look at opinion polls and you understand that the younger generation fairly universally is for equality, but the older generation that holds much of the money and the power is still fighting, as you say, for those last gasps. What does Lambda Legal do to try and deal with those local ordinances and regulations that really don't reflect the masses of the next generation? How do you attack that?
Well, I think you build on past successes. As we were talking about earlier in the program tonight, Lambda Legal was there for the Lawrence v. Texas case. Lambda Legal was there for the Windsor case. Lambda Legal was there for Obergefell. But those cases are the ones that get national attention. Lambda Legal is also the entity that won the right for Social Security benefits for a lesbian couple here in Texas, that has been fighting for parental rights here in Texas. And with each one of those wins, we crack the facade a little bit more. And at some point, we all recognize you're always going to have that one state that pops up that does this, or that one group that is arguing for this. But at the end of the day, I think what we're moving toward is a society that really does recognize that that's just not a basis to tell someone that they can't be a fully recognized person.
So the transgendered community clearly is sort of our last brethren that is predominantly oppressed and easily oppressed. They seem to be the weakest link in the protection chain. How does Lambda Legal approach the future, since our own ordinance in Houston failed so dismally by the minority achieving majority?
Well, it is truly unfortunate, and one of the things that, from my perspective, that has created this schism between the achievement of LGB rights and the non-achievement of T rights is that for so many years there has been so much education on lesbian, gay, bisexual rights, on lesbian, gay, bisexual lives. We see it in popular culture. We see it in television shows. The transgender issue has not been as publicized. As it's becoming more publicized, it's amazing to me how quickly acceptance is circling around that. Now, we live in Texas. Acceptance is not going to come overnight. Even in a metropolitan area like Houston, you still have a core group of people who can go out and use fear-mongering tactics that we heard in the campaign against Hero. You know, the idea that there was going to be people faking to be transgender to be in bathrooms to attack women, etc., when there was absolutely no empirical evidence of that ever happening in any of the cities that have passed those ordinances. But those are the kinds of messages that Lambda Legal, working with other organizations in the community, will continue to push, will continue to work for. And that's, I see it as a dual front. There will be a legal fight for transgender rights, but there's also going to be a real education effort that's ongoing, both in the courtroom and in the classroom and in the media and in popular culture.
Obviously, big successes last year for Lambda Legal, lots of challenges coming up.
I think with what's going on in South Carolina and Georgia and North Carolina, it'll be in Mississippi, and it will be Texas. I think fighting these religious freedom laws is probably perhaps the most important thing we can do.
So clearly you spent a lot of time dedicated volunteering and being on the board of this organization. Why does it resonate so strongly with you other than simply a lifestyle choice?
Well, I think there's nothing greater than our civil rights. Our civil rights allow us to live our lifestyle in an open and free market, if you will. So I don't think there's anything more important for us. I think people take it somewhat for granted now. If you go back and look at the history of LGBT rights and civil rights themselves, you see a progression. And a lot of the younger folks, I think, maybe people my age or older, have taken it all for granted. So I think understanding what Harvey Milk did, understanding even the AIDS epidemic, some things we forget necessarily with Lambda Legal is that it does cover HIV civil rights. I think it's a very important thing to underscore. So I think Lambda Legal is extremely important to, and not only historically to understand what happened before us and where we've come, but also to make the world the way we want it for people that come after us.
And so do you feel like some of your passion, especially as a lawyer, comes out of really trying to realize the ideals of the Constitution and what America has to offer, perhaps unlike any other country?
I think it's interesting how you look at the Constitution itself, right? How we look at it as lawyers, how we look at it as civilization, how Supreme Court justices look at this, and how it's been manipulated to mean something that it really doesn't. The idea of founders' intent, what the founders mean, that the Constitution should be interpreted word for word. And our understanding of the Constitution, at least what I studied, is much larger than that. It's a document that is sensitive to the time that it's written, but also sensitive to the time in which things are happening. So we can get into founders' intent a lot. I'm happy to do that. I don't think we have any idea what the founders intended. There's a lot to be said about judicial review and the Republican Party. Can I get into this? I'll just get into this. The Republican Party, Scalia, Thomas, not to get too legal here, but they believe they're textualists, they're originalists. But frankly, if you have a problem with judicial review and Marbury versus Madison, the founders were alive when Marbury versus Madison came down. So if the founders had an issue with it, they should have dealt with it then. It's something that's a very living, very alive concept that even the founders dealt with. So I like to see it historically in context.
I would just ask you, do you think some of the crossing and the fuzzy lines that have been drawn between the separation of church and state have allowed the continuation of some of the rhetoric that hurts our community today?
Yeah, I think people take positions now. They don't necessarily think through an issue, but they take a position. So there's nothing called compromise anymore. It is you have to be a Tea Party or you have to be a liberal, you have to be a conservative when that means. So I think that's affected it greatly. So if you have to be a conservative, then you have to be against LGBT rights. You have to be against against abortion, these are positions. These are not necessarily an understanding of the Constitution where it needs to go or where it is.
That if it's a sort of a polarized position strategy that is guiding a lot of legislation that's coming out, whether it's in the state or local levels, how does Lambda Legal navigate that? And you in your role even here as the Texas representative here in Houston?
I think with a great deal of strategic planning, and I think understanding what the Constitution means, what the precedent is, and I think you have to pay attention to public opinion and where we are as a country and where we're headed. We are a democracy. We're more of a republic than democracy, really. And so I think getting the word out, getting people on board is a very important thing. I think our sister organizations, if you will, HRC and Victory Fund, they do a really good job with that. The ACLU does a really good job with that. But what Lambda Legal does is it has a strategic plan. It takes cases that fit into that strategic plan and jurisdictions that will be successful, we hope. And the recent history has been that it has been completely successful.
Well, thank you for your dedication, Bo, and for taking time to speak with us. It's great. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, Kathy, you're on the board of Lambda Legal. Why is it important to you to be part of this organization and give you free time and so much of it to do this?
We're fighting for our rights. I mean, there are so many people who don't have a voice, and there are so many people who are out attacking us right now. You know, people are using I need my religious freedom so that I can not make a cake for your wedding, or so that I can not let you live in my apartment complex because it's against my religion. And I'm particularly offended when states or governments pass laws saying that even the public servants don't have to follow the law. Right? I mean, that makes no sense. I'm a taxpayer. If you don't like your job and don't want to do your job, you should quit. But we need to fight those types of things. And Lambda Legal's on the cutting edge, I would say the bleeding edge, of doing exactly that type of work.
So you don't see it any different as back in the 50s when blacks couldn't marry whites.
Loving versus Virginia was, I'm a lawyer, I studied that, and Loving versus Virginia was, I think, kind of a gateway case for us, because it did say that blacks and whites can't marry, and the government, the Supreme Court, said it's a fundamental right. The government can't meddle in such things that are so private and personal, such as who you should marry. And of course, then came along cases about, whether or not you have children and things of that. There are some things that are intensely personal. The government has no business being involved.
So how do you think the best way to address the fact that in the polls, the young people support rights and equality, but the older folks that hold the purse strings and the politics of it, the smaller minority, is really controlling and trying to do, as you say, what's happening in Mississippi to what's happening in the Carolinas? I mean, how do you fight that? How do you address that? Is it just money?
Yeah, no, it's not just money, but people need to vote. A lot of people talk. A lot of people don't get out and vote, right? You vote with your feet. Get to the polls and go vote. And that's the thing, is if people would just do that, that would make a huge difference. But so many people want equal rights, but they don't want to get out of bed to go to the polls. So they don't want to, it's raining, so, do it.
So over the next 6 months to a year, what are some of the action items that you think the board here can really be involved with?
A lot of the laws that states are trying to pass, saying, promoting religious liberties as a smokescreen, basically, for allowing people to discriminate. And I'm for religious liberty. I think you should be able to have your religion and practice your religion, but I do think that your employer can set what your job duties are, and you are required to do those job duties. And so I just don't think that we should give people a way to opt out of treating people equally and fairly. And frankly, I don't think you're being a Christian if you're saying I can treat people poorly. That's not the way I was raised to be a Christian. Religious values have always been a part of this country. They always have, from the very, very beginning. And they'll remain so, I think, for a long time, although church attendance is dwindling greatly, right? But I do think that a lot of the core values of many people in this organization comes from their religious upbringing. But we all believe that you should treat people fairly. And most people who are of a religious background will tell you they agree with that. And they won't discriminate against the people that they know. My hairdresser's the exception, my interior decorator's an exception, and my friend a lesbian, yeah, and they wouldn't, but on the nameless, faceless group, the category, they will discriminate and think that it's okay.
So do you think visibility of the LGBT community and through Lambda Legal's work, that's the best way to achieve these changes?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's funny, I remember hearing a comedian speak years ago, and she said, the way to do this, she said, is, if you don't want to come out to your family or your friends, is that you come out to other people, right? And you should be people you pay money to, so that they get so used to us, right? That we desensitize people to the fact that we're gay. And she said, so that way you don't have to come out to your family, because I'll be coming out to your family. She said, so when you go to the store and you pay for stuff, oh, here, by the way, I'm lesbian, right? And so that we kind of saturate folks with it. And I think we have done that now. I mean, that was 20 years ago. And now everybody knows somebody who's gay, right? And most people will have realized, oh yeah, Uncle Tom, who never got married, but his friend Bob always came with him to the family events. I mean, they put it together, and now I think people are hiding it less. And the more folks know us, and the more you know and like somebody who's gay, the harder it is to just continue to stand up and say, no, you shouldn't have the same rights I have.
Do you have any special concern about Texas being...
Absolutely. Absolutely. Our governor wanting to carry on Perry's policies, I'm ashamed of some of the things that this state tries to do. I really am. And they've got a critical mass, right? I mean, this is a very red state. I'm very proud to be a red state. And people will vote very much along the religious right.
And of course, Texas wasn't always a red state.
It was not. It was not.
So what do you think it's going to take for Lambda Legal to try and, even at the local, state, county level, to try and change that acceptance and mindset to where we might have been?
Yeah, the court's the only way to do it, right? If you can't outvote the people who are voting, you don't have enough numbers to vote in the people who are going to make the decisions you want made. The courtroom is the only other place to go fight that fight.
And that's why you have such a passion for Lambda Legal.
Absolutely. It is the best way to do it, and you get the government, a lot of people who are the representatives and senators saying, oh, you're legislating from the bench and you shouldn't be able to do that. But, you've got the tyranny of the majority going on. And if it's not for the courts, we don't have anybody else to turn to.
Well, thank you for serving on the board and for all your commitment. It's great.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So Travis, you're on the board with Lambda. Why is it so important to you that you spend that much time with this organization?
I went to law school so that I could, I'm talking to the camera? Okay. I went to law school so that I could help people. I really wanted to be a civil rights attorney out on the front lines fighting for the rights of people who couldn't fight for themselves. And I'm a corporate lawyer right now for a large oil and gas company. I can't do that. So I dedicate all of my spare time to making sure that someone gets an opportunity to get out there and fight for some of the folks who have no voice in our communities.
So you've clearly always followed your passion, and over the last year, it's been an interesting, successful year. What are some of your reflections on the past year, but more importantly, perhaps, where do you go next? I mean, there's so many more battles to fight. What's next?
Over the past year, it's been really, really cool and really exciting to be a part of this movement. Of course, the Love Wins movement is still something that resonates with everyone's hearts deeply, but we're facing some major challenges in lots of states, including Mississippi and North Carolina, and there are a myriad of others, so the battle isn't over yet. I'm thinking specifically also about employment discrimination. The laws in that sector of the legal landscape. There's so much work to be done. The fight is far from over, and we want to make sure that we're not going backwards. We want to make sure that we're always pushing forward in this fight for equality.
And so how do you deal with you get state and locals that are passing, ordinances and legislation of their own And when you realize that most of the young people in America side with the LGBT community and they're positive, but the loudness that's coming over the older generation seems to be overshadowing that. What do we do? What's our next steps to address that?
I think that there are two things that we can do to really address it in an overarching manner. The first is friend raising. We have to make sure that everyone who has a stake, our allies, are out there and they're loud and proud about our issues. And the second is fundraising. We have to donate to the causes that we care about, and we have to fund them appropriately, because I promise you, the other side, they are definitely out there and they are friend raising and fundraising, so we need to make sure that our voices are heard and that our pocketbooks are speaking as well.
So when you're talking about fundraising, are you taking a chapter in the future from Bernie Sanders' book? Because if there's a lot of us and we each give small amounts, we don't have to worry about that corporate dollar.
That's a great way to do it. We should be giving whatever we can give, and if that's a smaller amount, I'd implore all of my friends out there to give in those smaller donations and encourage your friends to do the same thing. I definitely do it with my friends. I think the corporate dollars are also important though, so we should be giving at all levels and give at an appropriate amount based on what you can give to the cause.
So over the next 6 months, what really is your action item? What does your personal agenda look like for the organization and your contribution?
Well, for the next 6 months, I think that here in Houston, we want to raise more awareness to the issues that are facing our local community, but there are also battles around the country that we definitely want to pitch in a helping hand. And again, that goes back to making sure that individuals in those communities are aware of the issues that are coming up and that they're donating to the cause, and also making sure that their friends are out there helping out with spreading the word.
And is Lambda Legal going to go ahead and try and resurrect the ordinance that former Mayor Parker was unable to successfully get across to our community?
You know, I am hopeful that some iteration of that ordinance will be resurrected. I'm not sure what form it'll be in, but I'm really, really hopeful that our political leaders here in Houston will do something about it.
A lot of people don't understand or know what Lambda Legal does. I've told a lot of people today that Lambda Legal filed a lawsuit on behalf of 3 UNC employees against the Religious Freedom Act bill in North Carolina. They'll probably file a lawsuit in Mississippi against the Religious Freedom Act there. And so it's important that people understand what Lambda Legal is and what they do.
We're really passionate about LGBT issues and equality. And given the number of people who are here, I think that we certainly have a large group of people in the Houston area who support it as well. There's a lot of work that's still yet to be done. We got some incredible victories last year, especially last June, but there's certainly some work and influence that we need to do. So our mission is just as strong as ever, and our goals have to be front and center to make sure that we are in line with meeting expectations and continuing to influence people in the direction of LGBT equality.
Do you have some thoughts about the difference between the younger generation, which clearly, polls overwhelmingly show support for diversity of all sorts, LGBT included, and the older generation, where you have all these Trump Cruise supporters that clearly want anything but?
There's some differences in generations. I think a lot of it is exposure to LGBT issues and to people who are LGBT. My experience is that there are a lot of people in the older generation who haven't had that exposure, but once they are exposed and they know someone who is in the LGBT community, their views tend to shift a little bit. And so I think it's a lot about exposure and just making sure people understand who we are and what we're about.
And from a legal perspective, where do you think we should go first? What do you think the priority is for this organization?
There are a lot of priorities I think we need to do, and obviously like figuring out which are more important than others are something that takes time and effort, but certainly continuing our issues that we did last year in terms of marriage equality. A lot of governments are trying to either overturn or limit that with regards to religious freedom, and I think it's important to respect people's religious freedom, but at the same time, those who have LGBT concerns should be given priority on those as well. And I think that it's a way of finding a happy medium and making sure everybody's comfortable with the situation. And also a lot of in my opinion, a lot of the transgender issues that are coming out, I think are crucial. We had successes last year, but there are still groups who need support, need our support, and we should be there.
Does it worry you that even after marriage equality, that even here, and again here in Houston, that you might have pockets that continue to try and discriminate, particularly about the transgender community?
Well, it's way more than pockets. There's probably still like 50% of the population that still has attitudes that are negative about the LGBTQ community. Especially as it comes with our youth and even young adults, not being supported by their parents, their religious communities giving them negative messages and that sort of thing. So
you feel strongly about continuing that fight?
Oh yeah.
And Lambda Legal's in a good position to participate in that.
Oh yeah, they're
lead the
still
charge.
very much needed in that realm. Like you said, especially with transgender people, with the attitudes that people have about not allowing them to express themselves as who they are, and just really a lot of ignorance around it, and a lack of willingness to understand, especially by some of the leaders that are opposing those types of things. That's really disappointing that they don't take the time to educate themselves about what the truth is, and then spread lies which help to fuel kind of that discrimination in society. So,
how do you think that you can support the community through Lambda Legal or other to try and continue to fight against those municipalities, counties, and states that continue to try, in the name of religious freedom, really do the same thing that they did back in the 50s, which is whites and blacks can't marry, gay people can't do this, I don't have to serve them if they come in. Do you see any difference between what happened in the 50s and what's happening now?
Oh no, there's a lot of parallels. In fact, that's a lot of what we use, as far as trying to explain to people why their beliefs are not very progressive, that because if we would say the same things about race that people say about gender and about sexual orientation, it would be like, well, of course that's wrong.